Hello, and welcome to today's class on Applique. And I'm typing in just a little line here to ask, can you hear me? Very good. Very good. I'd like to welcome you all today to our Wilcom video series for EmbroideryStudio E4.0. And today I'm going to show you how the Applique feature works in the program, and I'll be showing you a couple of different ways that you can do the Applique in order for to get it to work for you, because there's a way that you can actually do it inside of CorelDraw, and there's also a way that you can do it inside the embroidery mode as well. So I'm going to show you both of those methods on how to do that, and I just want to make sure that everyone can see and you can hear me. Actually, this class is being recorded so that if you're able, you can you'll get a link for this class, and you can replay this class at your leisure. It takes about takes a while for it to convert to format, and so you'll be getting a link for this tomorrow sometime. And so so right now I just want to get started with this design here, and basically we're going to go in. I have something here already selected on screen here, and this is something that I just created here on the screen actually. And I'm also going to go down here, and I'm going to remove some of the icons here from the bottom so that I can make my screen larger here. So some of these I really may need this one later. Okay, and so so I'm just going to go in and remove some of these so that my screen does open up a bit here. And so with this particular file here that we're working with, now I'm going to go in and I'm going to create an Applique using this G here on the screen. So there, like I mentioned earlier, there's a couple of different methods that you can use in order to do this, and I'm just going to show you a couple here. It's more creative, and you can be a bit more creative when you're working with Applique if you are doing something from scratch or something, if you're creating something yourself. And the other method would be actually if someone sent you a graphic or something like that in order for you to create the Applique with the graphic. And so, and sometimes when you get those type files, sometimes the artwork may not be let's say embroidery friendly, okay, because especially if it was something that was used for graphics, printing on t-shirts or things like that. And in that particular viewpoint of it, actually, it may not be suitable for embroidery, and the artwork or the graphic itself may need to be modified in order for it to be used for embroidery. And always keep in mind that the needle on the machine is about 1 millimeter wide, okay? And so keeping in mind that the Applique loves lots of space, nice easy shapes are going to work best for those type shapes actually, because they you know, it's a lot easier on the machine, and just easier to work with in general. So with this design here, I'm going to press 0 here on the screen here to get this place for us like this. So we have and I actually took this from one of the little font items that you have should have in your program here. So now if you look at this G, now I'm going to go in, I've got two colors here, and right now let's say this was sent, and so I want to create this G, and I also want to add a name in the center here also, but I want to implement this on top of an Applique is what I'm going to do with it. And so here inside the graphic mode, I'm able to go in and create the graphics for the applique. And the best way that I've found to do it for me is to be able to go in, and I love to use my shaping tools. I love to use my outline tools here also on the bottom. The outline tools allows me to go in and use outline vector lines like this. And this is the open inside fill here with just the outline. Up top here, you have the colored infill. So that's what this looks like here. But we want to use this one because we're going to go in, just going to create something around the outside of this G. So I'm going to roll my mouse button backwards here to get a better view here. So I'm just going to go in and I'm going to do this. Again, there's several different things that you can do. I'm going to choose this particular one for this one here because instead of, again, someone sending me something that I have to use with it, I'm creating my own. And so here's your Applique tools. This is what they look like here on your screen. And so I'm going to first go in, I'm going to click on my outline vector tool here. And I'm also going to navigate up top here, and I'm going to choose this one. I'm going to choose the freehand close shape tool because with an applique, it has to be a closed shape in order for it to work correctly. So as I left click here, now I'm going to go in. I'm just going to draw a shape around the outside of this. I'll start here, and all I'm doing is I'm going in and doing a smooth outline here with this. Oops. If you do something like that, make a mistake, you can always press your backspace key and hold it down. It's going to backspace it. I'm holding down my backspace key here. It's going to take me back to where I want to continue. Okay. Now, that didn't go as planned. Let's try this again. I'm making sure that I have enough space on the outside here too, so that I can continue this drawing. So this is how I'm going to do it, just like this. There. And so once I release my left mouse button here, this is what I have on my screen. I'm going to press H and then Harry here. I can take a look at my node points here that were created here. If I want to go in, I can zoom in. I can move these node points. I can click on them here and press space bar here to make the line points here curve points, okay, because it does go in and it allows me to go in and create the shapes here for this applique piece. So I have my applique outline here on my screen now that I want to use, and again, it's in a vector format here, which is very nice for me because I want to be able to use this and allow it to go in and create my applique. Now you can always click again, press your space bar to change the square points here or the yellow node points here. If you press your backspace key, it'll change it to a line point or a curve point here, which is the blue, light blue object on the screen. So here we are. I'm going to click on my select tool here. Now, so I have my shape that I want my applique to be. And so now I'm just going to go in. I have my applique tool here. And so I can select the object on the screen like this. Okay, and when that object is selected, and again, it is a vector outline is what I prefer working with here because you can convert these as well as the running stitches, but as far as being able to just go in and do something cool like this, I like using the vector tool, and it gets something that I like to use here. And I'm going to navigate here to my Applique toolbox, and I'm going to left click it. Now, as soon as I left click that Applique toolbox, something on the screen here happens. Okay, I get a dotted line around the entire design here, indicating that this is an applique, or would be perceived as an applique. And also, one thing that you always want to keep an eye on also is the bottom of your lower left corner of your screen here, where it says enter entry point. Okay, this is your prompt bar here. Will constantly ask you questions and or either tell you something. So you have to be also in tune to that lower left side of the screen there. So I'm going to use my entry point, and I'm going to put it up at the top like this, and I'm going to left click. Okay, and as soon as I do that, on the lower left corner now on my prompt bar is asking me to enter the exit point because it does want to know where I want to stop the stitching also inside the hoop area. So I'm going to enter the exit point in the same location as my start here, and as I left click, now on my lower left corner on my prompt bar, it's asking me to enter my frame out pose. Now, what this position here basically, so what that does is when, if you can imagine, you have a frame on your machine, and it goes in and it does the outline of the design itself basically. And once it gets to this point here, the frame is going to have to be pushed out so that you can lay your fabric down on the fabric that you're stitching on top of. So I'm just going to move out here. Usually about 2 inches should be enough. So I'm going to left click my mouse button here and see what happens here. So as soon as I left click my mouse button, it goes in and it finishes off the outline here, which I can go in and I can change the color of it here also. I go in and change that to red. So basically the applique itself is pretty much finished. All I've got to do now is go in and set the machine up for the applique. Okay, and by saying that, what that means is when you place the applique on the screen, you're not done with it yet actually, because all you've done basically is just place it on the screen, and but it hasn't been verified for the embroidery machine yet, because there's still some work to be done with that. Okay, I'm going to press 0 here on my screen here, and I'm going to roll my mouse button back. Right now I'm in true view. That's why everything looks like it's in 3D. If I press T to take off the true view, this is the view that I'm going to get here actually. Let me press T. It's going to look like this. Okay, and here's my jump out stitch that I did here, where I'm going to program the machine. When it moves the frame out, the frame is going to stop right about here in order for me to place my applique fabric on top of my embroidery fabric. Okay, and so right now with this, I've set this up. Again, I'm still not done yet, and I want you to take a look over to the color object list. So these are my objects over here from my color object list, and these objects here basically contain the applique, is what this is. Now, the applique itself is a combination of several objects combined into one another in order to get this to work. Okay, and so that's how the applique is set up. Now, with this, when you choose that applique, when you go in and you place it down and you tell it that you're gonna, once you finish that object on the screen here, you have your object properties. Applique also has its object properties as well. Okay, and this is where we have to go in and program the machine, or tell it what to do. Okay, to stitch this out in production. Okay, so there's two positions. The first position is placing the applique on the screen. Okay, the second position is to program the machine to stitch the applique. Okay, so with that said, with this, I'm going to click on my applique. It has to be selected, and I'm going to show you the options that you have in the applique properties. Okay, and so in the applique properties, as I navigate, I have it tells me up top here what I'm working with, which of course is my applique. Here I have a choice here of a fabric type that I can add or to put on the inside of the applique. Okay, this is just a visual on your screen, but if I wanted to, I could go in actually underneath that. It says applique fabric, and it has a little arrow here pointing to the left. And so I'm going to click on that arrow. Okay, when I click the arrow, I'm going to get an applique fabric display on my screen here. And here, if you have graphics or anything that you want to add to the inside of this applique, you can actually add the graphics to the inside of the applique. Now, what needs to happen actually when you go in and you're creating designs, the designs should be saved as a PNG file. Okay, and the PNG file is a file that or the file type that I'm going to show you right now. I'm going to choose the factory settings here for the program here. As I click my down arrow, I can choose corduroy, I can choose denim. Okay, I can choose leather, suede, hand knits, and these are just visuals here that I could see on my screen here as a backdrop here as a visual. Let's say I'm going to choose hand knits. Okay. Not only can I choose hand knits, I could also go in and change the color of it also by clicking on color here, and I could no, we'll use this one, the rose color. As I click OK here, it's gonna fill it in like this. Okay. Again, it's just a visual that you have on screen here. Now, because the applique is going to go down first, here I'll need to also move this to the start. Now, in order for me to do that, one way that I can do that is to go in and use my sequence tool. And this is what the sequence tool looks like here inside your program. It looks just like this. Okay. If you don't see that on your screen or any type of toolbox, all you have to do is find an open space like this, right click your mouse button on it, and anything here that has a check by it is displayed on the screen. So if it's not displayed on the screen, it won't have a check by it here. And so you locate the item, the toolbox that you're looking for, and you just left click it to open it like this, and you could click it again to turn it off. Okay, so now I'm going to go in. I want to select this, and I want to move this to the front because it's going to stitch first. So I'm going to navigate up top here. I have an option inside my sequence to move it to the start like that. I'm going to undo it. Here it's at the here it's on top. Okay, but I want it to be first, not last here. So I'm going to move this by selecting the move to start, and it moves that to the start of the design now. So now the applique is in position to stitch first with my design. Okay, I'm going to press T. This is what it looks like with the true view. Okay, I want you to notice something here also that we're going to talk about a little bit later. The center of the design is always going to be, or the stop and start of the design is always going to be with this white crosshair here. Okay, now if I select my applique here, and that white crosshair is definitely not in the center of the applique location here. Okay, now the reason for this is that the applique itself, the way that it measures the total width or height here of this design, if I choose Control A to select everything here, now I still have my jump out stitch, and so if I press T, I have my jump out stitch here. So if you noticed, the center position here is placed actually in the center of where the jump out stitch is to the bottom of the design here. So this is showing me that it's right here. Okay, so that's going to cause some issues in my frame actually if I leave it there. So you just want to keep in mind that once you go in, you do have the ability to go in and you can change where the start and stop is inside the design. If I click here and on the actual object here, I could just basically use my node points here to determine where the center is. So this is my center line. I'm just going to go here on my ruler and add a guide just like that. And what I'm going to do also is I like for my guides to be red. So I'm going to click on my background display colors. Here's my guide. I'm going to change that to red because that's I love the contrast that the red has against the white background. Okay, and so again, as I select this here, and I'm going to put one here also. So here is where my start and stop point should be right there. Okay, so I'm going to go up top to design. I'm going to choose auto start and end. Here, my pop-up here for my auto start and end, I want to go in and actually digitize my own auto start and end point here for the applique. So I'm going to click digitize start and end point here. I don't want to do it separately. I just want to start and stop on the same location. So I'll use this one here. And once I click OK, on my prompt bar on the lower left corner of my screen is asking me to enter my start and end point. And I'm just going to just right down the center here of those guides, and I'm going to place that white crosshair here. So this is the center of my design. Okay, And you want to always make sure that you save your designs often. So I'll go here and navigate to my PC. And I have a USB that sometimes it does not want to recognize here. So I'm going to put that in here. I'm going to changing the port for it here. And so there it is. Double click. And I'm going to save this there to my USB stick. Okay, so now, so we have our applique. We're still working on it. We're about we're still going in. We still have some work to do with it. But I just wanted to show you as I press T how this is going. Well, let me actually take it off for you. Now again, here's the jump out where the machine where the it's gonna stop. The frame is gonna move out on the machine and it's gonna stop. Now I'm gonna do a player to show you what's gonna happen with this. I'm gonna click my player really fast. I'm gonna go real slow. So now, so it goes in, my needle goes in, and it's gonna do my mark outline stitch first. And I'm gonna speed this up a little bit here. It does the mark outline stitch. Now, once it completes this mark outline stitch here, okay, the frame on the machine is gonna move out and the machine is gonna stop, okay? But I have not programmed the machine to do that yet, okay? Because that's why I have my properties over here so that I can set the machine up for production, okay? But right now, this as it moves out, the machine is gonna stop. I can place my applique fabric on top of my embroidered fabric here, okay? And once that's placed down, I'll press start on my machine and it's gonna come back in. It's going to do the zigzag stitch here around the outside edge of my fabric here to lock it down so it doesn't move. Okay, and so right now, as this is coming around, now the machine here has another option to jump out again and the frame to move out and for the machine to stop again. And I'm going to explain how that works, because usually you have two different types of applique, production appliques. You have one that you're going to be, you may have 20 dozen of these that you need to run for production. And in that particular case, there's different settings that you have to use in here for the applique, and I'll show you those in a second here. But I just want to just start this back up again. As it comes back in, it's going to go in, and here it's going to stitching the top layer of thread here. So again, you have total control over underlay stitches, whether you want to use any. You have the wide zigzag stitch that's going down to lock the fabric down, and you could use that, or you can go in and you can use your regular underlays also inside your program. And so that's the option that you have for it. Okay, and then of course we're going to go in and finish everything else here, but I'm just going to stop this here. Okay, so we have an applique. We have our design in the middle here like this, and I'm just going to press T to put the true view back on. Okay, so now we're going to go in and now we're going to set the machine up for the applique. Okay, so this is the second part of doing the applique, is programming the machine. Now we know that we can put a fabric in there and color it. We know that we can do that. Now the guide run stitch that you saw earlier, the first one that went down when it did the outline around the object, that's what this particular section here is for. Okay, it says guide run. Now if I'm going to do again 20, 30 dozen of these, you know, I'm going to use a die cut piece that I'm going to either send to my cutter, or I'm going to send the design out for someone that has a cutter, and they'll cut my die cut pieces for me. Okay, and that's going to be your pre-cut. Okay, and that means that you already have an applique die cut ready and available for you to use for your production already, because I can't see anyone cutting out 50 dozen applique pieces by hand. That might take a little minute to do that actually. So that's for your pre-cut. Okay. Next on the list, we have what we call trim in place. This is going to be if you're doing 2 or 3 of these, and there's no sense for you to create a graphic file to send out or to send to your cutter to cut the die pieces, because you're only doing 2 or 3 pieces. So you choose to cut these out manually with some scissors, and this is what you use for that. Okay, and so with this, the machine function it's going to add a function on the machine. It has to add an extra stop on the machine in order for this to happen actually. So if you can imagine, once I select trim in place, and notice what happens here too inside the color object list. Once I select it, it has to add another function, machine function. It has to add another jump out and stop is what it has to add for the machine. Okay, so that's set up, and as we scroll down, you have your stitch length here. The offsets at 0. I would usually leave those on default. And so here's where you tell the machine to stop once the frame moves out for the first time. Okay, and you have your frame out. Okay, you have 3 options. You can tell the machine to stop, which is what we want to do. Okay, so we can lay our fabric down. Some machines require a color change for this in order for the machine to do the production correctly for this. Some older machine types and stuff, and they may have to use a color change in order to activate that. Or you can choose none, which we don't want to do here, because we definitely need that machine to the frame to move out and stop. Okay, and so the first option here for the frame out, we do want the machine to stop when that frame moves out. So we're going to tell it to right here. Next, we have the tack down method here. Now you saw that, I'm going to zoom into this. I'm going to press T to take off the true view. You see this zigzag stitch here that's applied to lock the fabric down so it doesn't move. Okay, and so that's needed. And so some people don't like using the zigzag. Some people, by clicking the down arrow, they can choose a run stitch with this. Oops, got to have it selected, James. A run stitch for this, or they can choose an E stitch, which is like a blanket stitch, and it stitches like this, that they can use to lock that down. So that's your option. We're going to stick with the zigzag here, and so that's what it looks like. Now your count for this is 1. Okay, what this count means basically is that when your machine stitches this out, it's going to go across 1, 2, and goes to the next stitch 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and that's a single count is what that does actually. You don't want to change this unless you're doing something very special that you're understanding what needs to be done, because if I were to choose accidentally click this and type 5, that means that when the machine stitches, it's going to go across 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's going to do 5 stitches, okay, in one cycle. Okay, so we want to leave this at 1. Here's your width. I'm going to navigate up top here because I'm usually using metrics anyway. Here we are. And so the stitch spacing here for the zigzag here is at 3 millimeters wide, which makes it wider. The width here of the zigzag stitch here is 2.1 millimeters. Now these can be adjusted. You just have to be very careful that it's not overkill, because you don't want the zigzag to end up sticking out here on the outside edge. Okay, and that's something to keep in mind. Okay, you have your offset here with it, and that's the offset. Usually the offset default is usually goes 1/3 to the outside, 2/3 to the inside, normally for applique. And so now this next one, now once I've laid the fabric down, once I've gone in and I've trimmed around the outside of it, and so now it's time just to finish it off now, because there's nothing else for me to do other than just watch the machine finish it off. So this second frame out position here, I'm going to choose none. Okay, and watch what happens here again in the color object list as it takes away some of the machine functions like this. So now, so it's not going to So the frame is not going to jump out again, and the machine is going to stop, but it's going to continue running, okay, to finish off the applique. Okay, so the width usually of the border here is usually 4. I've been playing around with this. That's why some of those numbers here have changed actually. And so that frame out position here on the XY is just the position on the page. Okay, so I've gone in, made all of the necessary adjustments here to the applique in order to get the applique to the stitch properly. Okay, and so as I press my 0 key here on my screen, again, you see there are less jumps going out here now with these dotted lines. Okay, and so now this is how this is going to stitch out, and it's going to be different than what you saw the first time. As it goes, it does the mark outline stitch. As it does that mark outline, okay, machine goes up, okay, moves the frame out, and the machine stops. Okay, I lay my fabric down, okay, whether maybe I have some adhesive on the bottom of it, or what have you. And once I've done that, I'm going to press start again. It's going to go in, jump back in, and it's going to do again the second run line here, because this time, remember, we're trimming it in place, so it has to do the second run stitch here around the outline here, and the frame moves out a second time and the machine stops. Okay, that's when I go in with my scissors, and that's when I trim around the outside edge close as I can to the fabric without cutting the thread on this one, close as I can. And once I finish with that, you know, I'm ready to remove the excess fabric, and I'm going to press start again. Comes back in, and now it does the tack down stitch here for the zigzag to lock the fabric down so it doesn't move. Okay, and so this process, you know, it's a bit lengthy, but once you get used to doing it, actually, it's really simple. Okay, and again, the simpler the shapes, the better. And if you notice here, the machine did not, the frame did not move out again and stop because I told it not to by pressing none. Yes. So it's going to continue here. I'm going to speed this up a little bit as it does the outline of this one. Then it goes in and starts doing the stitching for the inside stitching that's going to go on top of my applique like this. Okay, and stop this here. And so that is, you know, pretty much what I want to do as far as my applique goes. Last but not least, I'll go in and add my text. So I'm going to go in, what I like to do is I like to measure first. I'm going to press M as in Mary for my measure tool, and I'm going to enter, I want my text to be 19.2. I'm going to press escape. As soon as I right click on my letter A here, get my properties, the first thing I'm going to do is go in and type in my height, 19.2. That way I've locked it in pretty much, and I don't have to go in and continuously make the lettering larger and make it smaller to try to get it to fit. And let's see what name we're going to use. We'll use Jenny, G-E, with the N and I this time. So with this, and I want to use let's add an A in here also, being creative. For the font, so I'm going to click the down arrow here, and I want to use, let's try plain script. I'm going to press P. It scrolls down to the P's here, and I'll use my roller, my mouse button here. Here's my plain script. Select it, and I'm going to choose create text, and I'm going to go on screen, and I'm going to click it right there. Okay, so there's my name, Jeannie here. So this is the, make sure that that's centered. So there's Jeannie. Now with this also, I have this I'm not liking too much. I don't know about you guys, but this looks kind of strange. Okay, and so you have the ability inside the program to go in and make changes with that. What I like to do is this. I'll go in again. I like to use my outline tool to do this with, but here I'm going to use just a regular running stitch with this, and I'll do it a different color. And I just want to do this because I want to make this G a lot more presentable. Okay, and so once I start here with this one, I'm going to go here, kind of imagining what this G would look like if it was that large. There, I'm going to press enter. Okay, and I'll do it on the outside here also. Again, this is just for a visual that I can use here to improve the shape of that, to make sure that it's that looks a lot better than what you see here right now. So I'm going to click my reshape tool here and can make this a little narrower. And again, this is just something that I do because I always want to improve my shapes when I'm working to make them look better if I can. And so by using this, now I'll go here and I'll click on the outlines here. I'll press H for my reshape tool, and I'll just go in and I'm going to grab, see here. Let's grab these. I'm going to use my left arrow key. Ooh, strange, hey? So, okay, I'll select these node points. What I don't want, I can just go in and just delete those. Okay, and all I'm doing is I'm lining these up with my outline. And these are very effective here because when you go in and you're using these, actually, you kind of using them as a guide. And using them as a guide here could be very effective here and there. And with these, all I'm doing is sliding those in. I have an option also going in and deleting those node points if I wanted to also. But just by doing something like this, now I can now click on these running stitches, go in and maybe get rid of some of these also, because once you get rid of some of these, actually, that means that you're using less node points here to go in and create that shape with it, just like this. As I zoom out, starts making sense a little bit here. And so again, so this is just something that you can do, or you don't have to do. This is just something that will help you just improve the overall look of the design. And these, like here, you can press delete here, because when it comes to the outline stitches here, basically you can use less because they're curve points actually, and because of that we can use less of them. Okay, so here just like that. Here, use my arrow keys here, improve my shape. Just like this. Okay, and so I think hopefully you get the gist of being able, just going in and adjusting that G so that it looks a lot better than the last one did actually. And sometimes when you're going in and you're modifying these objects here like this, too many curve points can cause some issues actually. So I try to make them as smooth as possible. And by deleting some of them also, it will make it look a lot nicer here. As I press my right mouse button on these to get them to do what I want them to do, like this. And I'm going to click save. Okay, so there's my genie. Okay, my stop and start here is in the center of the actual design itself, and not the center of the jump out, as well as the design. Okay, which is important. And so with that done, again, save it again here. So with that done, this particular applique is complete. Now, I have something else to share with you also. Now, the reason why you want to save this original file here as your EMB file, because you want to save this first in case you have to make any adjustments to the design. So in other words, you may end up saving 2, maybe 3 different versions of it. Okay, but that first version of it with the EMB file is crucial, because with the applique, this is what your applique object looks like here on the screen. Looks just like that. And now, so what if because I'm only doing 3 of these, what if I want to go in and I want to cut out my own die cut piece that I can use for my job here? Now, what I can do to print that out one-to-one is I'm going to navigate over here. You can click on your print preview here under the range here, or you can go to File and choose Print Preview. So once I click Print Preview here, I'm going to get my print preview page on the screen like this. Okay, so, and here, showing my approval sheet, here I can go into my options and select. Now, in order for me to have this applique die cut piece printed out one-to-one, giving me that option, I have to make absolutely sure that applique patterns here is selected. If this is not selected, it won't do it. So you're going to make sure, and so your worksheet type here and your print options, that applique pattern here is selected. I'm going to click OK. Now, if we want to take a look at that, I'm going to click up top here to the next page. Okay, it shows you the jump out here. It's like 7 inches, so it's pretty large. And so I go to next page. Here's the color film or the color sequence. Next page, production summary. Next page, there's that die cut piece one-to-one that I can cut out and use for my production. Okay, again, for these I'm only doing 3, so I can actually print this out and use this as a guide for me, and it is one-to-one. Okay, which is a great tool to be able to use when you're doing this, and that's the reason why saving that original EMB file is vital. Okay, I'm going to close this. All right, so this particular applique here is complete, and making sure everything is up to par here as far as going in. You can, if you want to go in and do something different, I mean, you could always go in and add some cool things to it. Like up top here, you have your program split. Like if I click this one and I click program split, it's going to go to the default with that here, with the arrowhead inside your properties. I can click the arrow here, and it's going to give me more options that I can use for this fill, just like this. Another one that I love also is the brick, but it has to be correct, because sometimes based on the shape of it, it may not do like for a much wider area would look much better for this brick here. So because you got this fill stitch here going in that stitch angle here, so when I go in and I choose the one that I want to use for this, several options here to choose from like this, and so you can go in and you can use these in order to get them to work like that one. Now, if this one is the keyhole, and I want to also use the keyhole for this one and this one, one way that I can do that is I can right click on this one selected. I can make these properties current. I can select the next one, right click on it, and I can apply those current properties there. I can right click on this one and choose apply current properties there also. So you have that ability to go in and apply those current properties like this, which is pretty cool. Just give you, again, you have so many options to choose if you're creating your own applique. And I'm going to click save here. So that's how to do the applique from the embroidery side if you're going in. So now I'm going to show you how that works from the Corel side. Okay, and so all I'm going to do here is I'm going to go in we can still use this one. We'll just go in and do a different one. So we'll have two on the screen actually. So I'm just going to navigate up top here. I'm going to go to File, underneath File, and click on Switch to CorelDraw. As it's converting over to CorelDraw, what we're going to do is we're going to go in and we're going to do a different applique. We can do an applique doing some letters actually is what we can do with that. So once this goes over, we'll go in and we'll continue with that. With this too, actually, I just thought about doing a zigzag or a open stitch with this with like a zigzag on the outside. What about that? We'll try that when we get back on this side. All right. So again, with your Applique tool inside your program, it's a powerful toolbox here in order to giving you the ability to do different things with it inside the software. Now here, whenever you go over to the graphic CorelDraw side with anything stitched on the screen over there, it's going to come over here. It's like a part of the background. Okay. So you can't move it or do anything to it over here, but it's okay because once we switch back to the other side and stuff, we'll be doing something different. But that's why this is it's kind of like a background piece of the background here. Now in CorelDraw, we can go in and we can do some cool applique things also. And with that here, I'm going to navigate over here to I'm going to click on my lettering tool here. Okay, I'm going to go on the screen. I'm going to click here. Left click, and I'm going to type in JT. Okay, now, so with this, with JT, of course, I got to make this, I'm going to click on my select tool here. I'm going to make this bigger. Again, we talked about the size of the applique. It needs to be a decent size in order for it to work properly to the best of its ability. And so when I click my tool here, I'm going to change the font to a thicker font. Okay. Again, Applique loves larger, thick shapes actually because they work a lot better in that way. So let's scroll here and let's see what we have. Let's try this one. So now with this, I'm going to lock this on the screen so it doesn't move. And this one is about 6 inches wide. Okay. And about 3, make it a little bit bigger there. Okay, so for something like this inside the graphic mode with the design here, now you have options here also, like I can select these, I can choose to, if they're too close together, I can click on them and navigate over here and click my shape tool, and I could just click on this here to the left. It'll move it over here as I click. And so this time I just want to go in and do just a basic simple applique for this particular job here actually. And I'll have a more advanced class in applique also that will go into more detail and do more complex things with it. So this particular class here is just the basics actually. So as I select this on my screen here, I want to also change the color. So I'll navigate over here to the right side and change that color to green. And once you select it here, the only thing left to do here now is to go in and click on, this is the tag as Applique toolbar here inside the graphic mode. And once I left click on this, it's going to go in and it's going to place a border around my lettering. Now with this, you do have the option here that you can actually go in and you could adjust and change the outline here to a dotted line. You have the option to do that as well inside the program. And so you have your object properties list here. Okay, and in object properties, you can go in and you can make different types of patterns here for those as well. But we're going to keep it simple and just use what we have here on the screen. And so we're just going to go in now, and I want to tag. I've already tagged it as an applique here. And the next step here is to navigate over and convert it, the graphics to embroidery. Okay, and so this is what happens. It brings it back over into the embroidery mode. And so right now, as I press T to take off the true view, now you see I've got jumps here, trims here actually, because we have two letters. And so the machine here is jumping out and stopping twice here. And in this particular instant, I want to go in and I'm going to have to change this because I only want it to jump out once or just twice actually, and not just 4 times. Okay, because I have 2 separate letters here. And so this is a situation now where I'll go in just like we did earlier. You have your applique tools. When you go in, right click here, go to object properties. It takes you to the applique properties here, and you have your fill. And we do the same thing that we did before with it. Actually, we'll go in and we have the option. You have to tell the machine what you want to do. Okay, if we have 10 dozen of these to do, of course, we'll use the Precut, in which we'll save a CVF file or a any type of graphic vector outline file to send to our cutter. Okay, and so we have the choice here. Do I have a lot of them to do, or do I have 1 or 2? Okay, and that would be your choice here. So let's say for this one, we're going to do, let's say we're going to do for this one a pre-cut, because we have about 10 dozen of these to do here actually. Okay, and so for this one, we use this option. And as we scroll down, again, when that frame moves out the first time, we still want the machine to stop. Okay, and as it comes back on top here, it does the run stitch for that tack here. And again, the second option here for the frame out, we want to choose none, because all we need is just the basics here, and it's going to run it through here, and we're going to cut this out to send it out to get it done, or we're going to do it ourselves actually with our own cutters. Okay, so right now, once I click this, and if I press T, this is what it looks like here. Okay, so right now the machine here is going out and it's stopping. It's doing it on both of these. These are 2 separate appliques here. Okay, so what we did the last time, when we go in, so we select this here. Again, the stop and stop here, I'm going to use my guide here, and I'll use my guide here also. So we know that the center for this actually is right here. Okay, so I'm going to go to design again. I'm going to choose auto start and end, and I'm going to digitize it again here, and I'll lay that down right there. So that's my stop and start here of, let's say if this was a separate design, of course, this one on the screen here, we'll cut this one for the moment. Okay, so we have a new center point here for this. Okay, and so now also when it does the stitching for this, as we go in and we do the player again, so it does here, it does two jump outs and stops here. And for some of us, we don't want that to happen. We only want it to do it once actually, not twice, because of course that will extend the runtime on the machine. And so we have options for that. Okay, so now again, you want to save that design first. You want to make sure that you save it first. And for this one, I'm going to name this JT. I'm I'm going to click Save here. Again, saving the original EMB file is very important, okay, because you may need it for the for something different actually. So now, next, because I don't want the machine to go out 2 times, there's an option here that you can use for this. Right now, it's jumping out twice. We can see the jump out here. What we're going to do to only make it jump out once, we're going to select both of these here. And in the Applique toolbar here, we have some options here to choose from, okay? We have a combine Applique components together. And once we combine them, that means the machine is only going to go out and stop just that once, okay, instead of doing it twice. So once I select this here, I'm going to undo this. Watch what happens to my color object list when I go in and I select this here. Here, it's going to give you a pop-up window here to let you know that you need to save your original design before continuing, to keep a copy of your original Applique objects, okay? And so we'll click OK here. And now look what happens here in the color object list now. That goes in. So now let's watch and see how it stitches out with the player. Goes in. It does both of those first before it does the frame out and stop. There. Once that's done, press start again. It comes back in and it goes in and it finishes everything else off. And you can again control this as far as being able to go in and do the applique in this particular order here. Okay, so now let's say that this particular applique here, I'll go in and I will do a save as on this one, but I'll name this the 2. Okay, because I don't want to save it as the same as the same design. 2 and save. Okay, so now watch this. As I go in, I want to make sure also that when I go in and use this particular applique here, that everything is done correctly. So now I'm ready to save the design, and I'm ready to save the cut file to send to my cutter, or send the cut file to someone else that has a cutter, and the any other type file that I want to save with this. And we do this by going over to File and scrolling down here to Export Multi-Decoration Files. Okay, once I select this here, it's going to give me some options here on this pop-up window. Okay, I'm going to save the embroidery design. Okay, if I have any applique shapes here that were they're broken apart now actually, but so with this actually, if I'm exporting out, I have my design name here. Okay, so you have your options here that you can go in and save to your export location. Like right now, if I go to use the set locations here, it's going to save it to my documents multi-decoration folder here, or you can choose it and save it somewhere else by choosing your browser and save it somewhere else on your in your computer actually. So so having said that, you know, you have those options to be able to go in and export to those locations. I'm going to cancel this real quick here. I'm going to back this up here also. I'm taking it back here to where we can actually see our applique objects here on the screen. And this time I'm going to go to File and I choose Export Multi-Decoration Files. You see what happened this time that didn't happen before? After that is broken apart with the combined applique components, it's going to give you more options here now. I can save the applique shape here as a DXF file, or I can save it to any of these file formats here and send to a person. Here's the SVG. I can send that to someone who has a cutter, or I can send it to my own cutter. Okay, that's the option that you have for that one. And so You can choose different options here as far as printing and things like that also. I'm just going to cancel this because I want to export it that way here. Okay, let's cancel it. And so here, again, you can save this to your desired destination here also. And you can save all of these files at once and send them to that location. And it's much faster doing it that way. Okay, so that's pretty much going to do it here for our Applique class today. Actually, if you have any questions for me, I'll be more than happy to take them now. No questions? Okay, well, if there are no questions for me today, this is going to do it for our class today. And let me type this here. And I'll ask again, actually, if you have any questions, just want to make sure that you can hear me. Okay. So if there are no questions, again, this is going to do it for this class for today. I do thank you for joining me, and I will be sending out a link to this class tomorrow after the formatting is finished with it. And I just want to thank you for your time. Thank you for joining me today. And if you have any other questions, basically, you can just give us a call at support@wilcomamerica.com. And we always ask that you also join us at www.wilcomamerica.com. And thank you so much for your time. Have a great evening.